Hello again. Now, 4 in 10 parents fear terrorism is causing anxiety in their children. However, explaining the issue to them without making them feel even more stressed can be difficult.
Is this the answer to children talking about terrorism? This is the book that we've just made reference to. It names Osama bin Laden as the most famous terrorist and details that he was killed as punishment for plotting the 9/11 attacks.
It also gives details on why terrorists try to hurt people, with a cartoon depicting a terrorist holding a rifle and wearing an explosives belt.
And lists things you can do to stay safe, including making your body strong and fit so that you can run away from a terrorist.
Well, author of the book, Dr. Carole Lieberman, joins us now, along with head teacher Sophie, who thinks children are too young to deal with these issues. Well, no one can accuse you of not confronting the issue head-on, can they? I suppose the question is if you're 5 years old, knowing this kind of detail, is that going to make you calmer and less anxious, or is it putting adult worries onto youngsters that are very, very little?
Well, I say that terrorism is the birds and the bees talk of the 21st century. It is a fact of life, an unfortunate fact of life, that parents do feel awkward talking to children about, and this is to help the parents and teachers to bridge that gap, to give them a way to talk about it. Now, in the first section, which is for the adults, I say that you have to decide whether your child is old enough or mature enough to look at the children's portion in total, or just do little bits and pieces. So for a 5-year-old, for example, you wouldn't necessarily read the whole part of the book that's for children. You would just take little pieces. But the key thing...
And it's very obvious which to do, is it?
Well, I mean, you can start from the beginning. The beginning actually talks about how children know a lot more about terrorism than parents and teachers want to recognize. They're in denial. A lot of adults are in denial. And
so, Sophie, you have experience at as head teacher at 3 in London secondary schools. You object to this. Are you in denial?
Objected may be too strong a word. I'm a bit surprised. I put it as a bit of more lunacy from across the pond, which we've been getting a bit of lately. But actually, having a look at it, it goes against every instinct I understand as a head teacher, father and grandfather, where initially I think with children you want them to feel happy, you want them to feel confident, and you want them to feel safe. They'll make up enough nightmares of their own, in my experience, without us adding to something that we adults cannot deal with. We don't understand terrorism, we don't know how to deal with it, and yet we're now telling, I think, Kate, you just made the point, we're now telling children, well, this is what it's all about. We don't even know.
Wait a second.
Cartoons of suicide bombers?
First of all...
Osama bin Laden is a sort of famous terrorist?
Wait a minute. But I'm not making these things up, and the children are aware of that. In fact, just recently, when I've been in London and Manchester with the book and doing signings and so on, I have come across kids, and it's similar to the United States, where they're thirsty. They see the book and they want to look through it and they want to understand these things. I talk about, for example, a terrorist is like the bully on the playground. I talk about it in language that is for children. And as a head teacher, you should be very concerned about things that interfere with children's ability to learn. And when they're frightened, as it has been proven that they are, from what they see on the telly, from what they hear on the radio and so on, they are aware of these things. Well, I'm not telling them something new.
One of the things that worries me is things like you say, if you have vitamins, you can run away more quickly from a terrorist. I mean, it's good to be fit, but making it connected to be saving yourself from a terrorist. And also you said that if people had read this, there would have been fewer deaths in Manchester. One of the things that worries me about that is, yes, it's good advice, but it's then giving kids the responsibility of saving themselves and almost implying that those who died weren't responsible. It was somehow their failing, whereas actually, no, it's so arbitrary.
Absolutely not. It's not the advantage, so to speak, of terrorism is that it's making children and families pay more attention to things that will make them psychologically and physically healthier.
I'm sorry, but you're bringing this to the children. I'm afraid I disagree with the fact. You know, I run 3 schools, I see children all the time. top topic of conversation is not terrorism.
Well, maybe
I can
when
assure you.
maybe when you're there, it's not. But I can assure you, when you're not there, that is what they're talking about, and they're giving themselves
Well, you
misinformation.
obviously see a lot more
And
children than I do, but I doubt it somehow.
yes, I do
and,
treat children, and I studied in London under Anna Freud.
Well,
So-
the other thing, the other
Doctor-
point I would
Yeah.
just want to make, really, is that some of the most disturbing stuff to do with terrorism is actually the way that child terrorism is brought into play. You know, in terms of what are these child terrorists told? They're told about the evil West, and we have to prepare ourselves for Armageddon.
Yes,
Here's a
yes.
gun, because that would be the logical next step to this. Let's prepare our children for the terrorists round the corner.
That is absurd.
Sorry,
First of
it's
all,
not at all.
I give 88 things that parents and teachers can do to help children express their feelings about terrorism, and things to do to talk about this. It's much better for children to hear about it from their parent or teacher than to be watching television and see
Dr.
all
Lieberman,
this
let me
violence.
put the exact point that Kate just read out about take your vitamins so that you can
But-
run away from a terrorist.
You're-
Imagine the fear in a
Wait a
child
minute.
thinking, if I didn't take my vitamins today, I'm at risk.
Wait a minute. No, you're taking this out of context.
But that's what you've written in your book.
At the end of the children's section, I have 10 things that children can do to keep themselves safer from a terrorist attack or terrorism. That's one thing. I also talk about spreading kindness, how love, for example, is the antidote to terrorism. I don't use the word antidote in the book for children, but, you know, that's how to fight against
The
terrorism.
fact of the matter is, though, as Kate points out, it's not children who are responsible for protecting themselves from terrorists.
But-
it's security services, it's police forces.
Absolutely, and I have that in there as well. In fact, there's a place where they're supposed to put telephone numbers and addresses of where to go. I have practical guidance as well. And yes, and I have things that parents and teachers can say, the answers to the most frequently asked questions. So you have to take the whole thing as a whole, not just to take the vitamins.
I mean, Serge, you know, there's a lot of, I think, it's difficult being a parent. There isn't a book, although maybe this is a book that you're trying to say, but there are some good advice in here about, you know, really concentrate on keeping your home as stable as possible. Try to keep, you know, alcohol abuse or people abuse alcohol away from you.
Right.
That's all generally very
but that's
good
advice, full stop.
isn't it?
It's linking it to the
Absolutely.
terrorism aspect that worries me. You know, teach them how to cross the road. That's a bigger threat than a terrorist.
I say
you know,
that.
Stranger
I
danger.
actually
no,
say
but what I'm
that.
saying is that this is completely over the top. You know, there's no place for it, certainly in the country that I know. You know,
Well, really,
and,
the,
as I
children,
said,
the children who I have come across in the country that you know have been very happy to hear that some adult, namely me, when I was talking about the book, is actually acknowledging that, yes, there is such a thing as terrorism, and we can talk about
I
it.
don't know how you run your studies, but I can guarantee you brought the subject to the table.
Yes, of course.
And that's the point.
But no, but
if
they
you,
were-
if you
but they
tell
were-
them
no.
what to talk about and be
You're
worried
worried
about,
it's gonna
they're
cause
going to
more
be
concern.
worried. Of
No,
course.
they were
That's
thrilled.
exactly the
They
point.
were thrilled that someone was finally acknowledging
They were thrilled
that
at
they
the
are.
attention.
they
That's what they were
No,
thrilled
they were
at.
thrilled that someone was finally acknowledging it, because if parents and teachers don't tell them about this, it's
No,
essentially
that's
like
not true.
like
when
lying.
children ask the questions,
But you
actually,
can't
I
just-
trust most parents and most
But
teachers
you
to give a sensible answer.
So
But-
that's
you know,
an interesting point, actually. If there are children who do come to teachers and say, what's going on? Are we under threat?
Absolutely.
Should I have a reason to be
And
worried?
you give an answer as best we can, because we have no real answers. And if that could, then we refer back to a book. We don't need to refer back to a book to say, do you know what, there's some bad people in the world. We don't really know why they're doing this horrible stuff. But look, by and large, like, you've got to live your life the way that you always live it. Be
But
happy.
that don't
Well,
really know
that's-
why is, I guess, the question
That
that
doesn't
leaves
answer
children.
why.
Does it answer why?
Why terrorists are doing
Yeah.
this? Yes, it does give. It talks about people who have problems within themselves. I talk about, as I said, the bully on the playground. Just like the bully on the playground has problems within himself, the terrorists have problems within themselves that make them
Well, that's not
misinterpret.
answered. The child would say, what problems?
Wait a minute, that make them misinterpret. Well, I go into it in a little more detail, but that misinterpret the Quran to get people to fight. So I do it head on. I mean, I talk about that.
OK. Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. It's an interesting debate, and we've asked people to comment on it, so do let us know. Is it something that your children are asking about? Are you concerned that if you do try and tackle it with your children, actually, it gives it more prominence? It makes
would
it
it help?
more of a concern.
Let us know. Let us know.
Thanks both very much indeed. Good to talk to you this morning.